Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in. Yes, yeah. I'm Zing from SGInnovate. We are a government-owned organization that invests in and helps build deep tech startups that leverage science and technology to make life better for all. A big part of our work is to build a global community of leaders and doers who are driving deep tech innovations such as AI, cybersecurity, medtech, quantum tech in our economy and society. Today, we are very happy to partner with General Assembly to bring you future of work, privacy, and data concerns in unprecedented times. If today's webinars whet your appetite for more, we are having a cybersecurity professional series of workshops conducted by one of our expert panelists, Evan Lee, starting next week. So do check out more information in the chat box to find out more. Before I hand over the time to Dr. Vivi Suhendra, our moderator for the day, I'd like to invite Seema from General Assembly to say a few words. Seema, please.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. My name's Seema. I'm the marketing producer at General Assembly Singapore. We're so happy to be here and partner with SGInnovate for this awesome event. For those of you that don't know much about General Assembly, we host part-time and full-time courses, and those are in UX design, digital marketing, data science, and software engineering. And then we have a whole bunch of shorter workshops, which are usually just like 2 hours or a weekend workshop. And then we do a lot of free community events just like this one. So if you're interested in learning more, definitely check out our website. And I don't want to take up too much time because I know we have a really interesting conversation going on today. So I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Vivi Suhendra. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Seema. So I would open by saying thank you to SGInnovate and also General Assembly for inviting me to moderate this very exciting panel. And of course, thank you to all our audience for tuning in. So we will start with discussions among the panelists first. We have a flow that we prepared, and then I aim to also invite the questions from the audience and start addressing it maybe 12:40, like 20 minutes at least, because I'm sure people will have a lot of questions. So I think there's a Q&A window for the Zoom. I think you all can find it at the control screen at the bottom of your screen. So feel free to start typing in that Q&A window during the panel, because the questions may occur to you anytime during the discussions. And then 12:40, I will look at it and we will pick the questions to answer. I think you can also upvote the questions that you like. So yeah, please do interact actively for this session. So again, I'm Vivi Suhendra. I'm from the Singapore Cybersecurity Consortium, which is a national platform to facilitate engagement for cybersecurity collaborations between academia, industry, and also government. So I'm very delighted to have all the sectors represented here this afternoon to give us their perspectives on this topic, which is the future of work and how the cybersecurity landscape may change with this situation that we are currently having right now. So before we start with the discussions, I would like to invite our panelists to do a self-introduction of themselves and what is their background. So maybe I will start with the sequence that you have in the event page, which is starting from Ivan. Hi, Ivan.
Hello. Hi. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ivan. I'm from ITRA, Center for Research in Cybersecurity. We focus on R&T, international cyber exercise, and cybersecurity training. Welcome to this panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Ivan. So next slide, can we have Mei Hui?
Hi, everyone. I'm Mei Hui from the Government Technology Agency. So I'm part of the SOC and engineering team. So happy to be here to be sharing about my experience.
Thanks, Mei Hui. Next, can we have Manan?
Hi, thank you. Hi there, everybody. Thank you for having me, first of all, on this great panel. And thank you, everybody, for joining. My name is Qureshi. I'm part of the Asia Pacific team at IBM. I handle cyber risk and resilience. Glad to be here. By the way, I'm actually an ex-CISO as well from the financial sector. And I think that is something, I'm glad to share those experiences and insights with this panel today. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Manan. And then Shahnawaz or Shan.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shan. I'm a principal security advisor at F5 Networks. We deal a lot with application security and remote access. So let's see what kind of questions that we get for all our applications today.
Hi, thank you, Shan. So I think we would like to start by something a bit more, your own experience in this pandemic situation where we have been working from home, working remotely, and of course, doing things more virtual and digital now. So I would like to ask the panelists to share, how have the ways of working changed in your organization, in your role? So in terms of operations or business practices, policies, collaborations that you need to do, how have that changed? And I think you all are coming from different sectors, so we do hope to hear all your different perspectives on this. So again, taking turns, can we start with Ivan, please?
Hi. So I must admit that this situation has caused an impact on us. We are a little bit taken aback on how things can be done now. Previously, we have physical access to all our infrastructures, and then now suddenly the kind of contact is lost. And even for us to have those international cyber exercise, we actually have to migrate to the cloud instead of having a physical test bits being the platforms. So I must say, first thing is the mindset shift is something that's happening, and the way you want to conduct your daily activity becomes a challenge. Not only that you have to prepare for it, but is your infrastructures ready? That is something very important. But I think more important thing is the human like us. We are now out of the premise of our company. So in terms of privacy, how much are we being exposed to? Because we are now using our own Wi-Fi and connect back to the companies. And in terms of cyber security exposure, you have now become the first line of defense rather than the system in your company becomes the first. Yep.
Yeah, very good point, Ivan. So as in you're also managing the research labs, all those physical hardware. So I'm sure there are some research activities that, because through the cloud is not the same as your work on the actual hardware itself, which is, the point of having the very advanced test beds.
Precisely. So those test beds that we have are operational realistic test beds. So we are able to see the physical properties that we are expecting when we are doing cybersecurity experiment. But once we move to cloud, what we have to do is we create digital twin. We try to create a model, but because the time is so short, we try to create a simplistic framework to try to represent the test beds. But I must agree with you, the outcome of the experiment might not be as realistic as the physical test bed that we are using. So this is something that research have to adjust a little bit on how are we going to complement the loss in accuracy in this aspect.
I see. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So maybe we move on first to the next panelist, Mei Hui. I hope she can share more about how the government agency, since in her role, she needs to also make sure that things are still running and still secure and protected. Mei Hui, can you share more?
So for my side, I think we've actually faced very similar challenges with Ivan because there's for the teams that I work with, we have a lot of collaboration with actually different agencies and also even different teams within our organization, which is quite big. So what some of the challenges that we face, of course, is the lack of contact time. So we have been moving all the meetings to be virtual instead of physical, and certain systems, of course, need to be accessed in person. So all those needs to be handled separately, with the BCP kicking in and all that once circuit breaker came in. Then I think one of the things that we notice a change is that there is a greater need for the segregation of roles, because a lot of data access that is on cloud or sharing through different platforms is actually quite important to identify who are the ones who are able to access it and who are the ones who are not. So it's not something that is a blanket. And that was not so much of a problem if there was physical access. So I think that was one of the things that had to transition and be quickly done.
Yeah, I think similar to what Ivan mentioned is that previously you have all the systems in place physically, but now you are remotely, so you become the one that needs to take care more of how you do things. Yeah,
and also make sure that of course the data is only accessed on a need basis, so those who are actually not supposed to be looking at those things do not have access to it. So some of the adjustments that we had to do, of course.
I see. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So how about Manan? Maybe you can share with us, since you're handling a big corporations, that surely there are a lot of functions that need to integrate somehow and make sure that everything is holistically protected.
No, thank you for that question. No, absolutely. I think we're living in unprecedented times. This happened once before in this century, in the last century. And the thing about this pandemic is this is going to be a recurring pandemic. And we're seeing obviously the use of mobile software, hardware, and collaboration platforms to go on the rise. But like the other panelists have mentioned, the thing which this pandemic has exposed is making sure across our client palette and the partners we're working with is that security, risk, and resilience is something which needs to be embedded into the fabric of the organization, because everybody now is working from home. Teams are, client teams, our organization teams are bifurcated, trifurcated, manpower is limited. So not having that ingrained risk view of how to manage the organization and how to minimize those risks is something which we're seeing our clients grapple with. And as we are seeing from studies in the market, this pandemic is going to be a recurring phenomenon. And even after a vaccine comes out, there are going to be population centers which are going to be remain infected. And that obviously means a transformation in the way we work, the transformation in which we accept this new normalcy which we have. And that means a lot of things. I'm sure over the next 30 minutes we'll go into them. But just to mention a few, of course, making sure that your infrastructure, making sure that your mobility platforms, making sure the way your organization handles risk, resilience, security as a holistic, from a holistic perspective, is ingrained into the organization. And that obviously comes back to changing the culture of the organization. And I think we're seeing a lot of our partners, and we're working with a lot of our partners on getting them on that journey. I think that's a long-term view which we have to take. Even after this pandemic is over, I don't want to be the harbinger of bad news, but obviously I'm a risk practitioner, so I have to mention this. I think this is just the start of the pandemic phenomenon which we see given where we are as a society in general in the world. So we're going to see many more pandemics come our way. So we have to obviously transform to meet those challenges along the lines which I just mentioned.
Yeah, and I think it has been mentioned that it's just accelerating actually, as in the shift to remote working, to digital is all actually in the pipeline sort of. So this is just accelerating it. So I think people will have to get ready for that. Yeah.
No, absolutely, absolutely. This migration to the cloud and making sure, for me as a security and resilience practitioner, these are interesting times because we're seeing organizations find out, oh, we've had these gaps all along, but there was no impetus to ingrain those practices into the fabric of the organization. But now that is obviously changed. And the thing is, this pandemic isn't going anywhere anytime soon. Even after the vaccine comes out in 18 months or 20 months, it's going to take time for population centers. Well, Singapore, obviously we're a small country, but in general, as long as one population center stays infected, the protocols to make sure that those infected people or those infectees don't come and release the virus again here, that means forever a transformation that is forever change the way we work. And that means we were seeing across the region organizations ingrain security, resiliency, mobility, cloud as part of the fabric of how they work, how they operate for the long term.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So now, Sean, your turn. Yeah, because I understand Sean also works with a lot of clients, advising them, whether it's people or enterprises. Yep. So it's very collaborative in nature. So there should be a lot of change in that, and also how you may see them, struggling with this change. Probably.
Yeah. So this is an interesting point, right? Like everyone mentioned, there is a certain amount of issues with moving completely remote. But if you take a look at how the industry has generally been shaping, right? We see a lot of people have been talking about the ability to not secure just the castle. Like most of the times what we think about is our data center is our castle. We put all our guards, all our gates over there. And then we try to secure everything in and out of that place. But people in general have been moving away from those kind of work environments, right? It's just that organizations were a little bit slow. They say, okay, let me build this solution that caters for 20% of the population that actually works remotely or wants to work in a remote fashion. Or let's build some solutions or the new solutions which can be accessed over the web and does not need a dedicated access from the data center. But what happened with this pandemic was, instead of your 20% of your population or your workforce, your 100% of the workforce is outside now. So there is a time now that we are looking at this as a problem, saying that, okay, whatever we have built for the new age applications, it might not be able to scale. And our traditional applications, oh, too bad, we won't be able to access. So there is a race that we see right now going on. How is it that I can quickly make most of our workforce up and running and get to their optimal job working positions from the remote section? So that's why I concur with most of the problems that Ivan and Mehui actually presented, saying that, okay, now we don't have access to the data. Yes, we can have access to the data, but yes, it will take certain amount of time to build those infrastructures, to provide those gateways which can allow you to come inside the system and access it securely. One more important point at this point of stage is, like, if you are trying to access or open some of these access, it does not mean that you should look or overlook anything on the security perspective, because that's the last thing that we want to do. Because this, just like everything else, every other pandemic, what we are seeing is this is creating an environment of fear, uncertainty, and danger. This is where the bad guys actually live, and this is their golden time. One simple email talking about, okay, this is a new controversy that they just want to spread. People will go ahead and click that email. Now that the castle gates are not there to protect them, they are more likely to fall into these traps. So that's why a more pragmatic approach is needed right now, and people have to be careful, as well as the enterprises have to be careful as they open up their access gates.
Yeah. So yeah, that brings us really very nicely to the things that I want to follow up, which is both Shan and Manan also brought up that, now that these things is forcing people to work remotely, and then suddenly they discover, oh, my things is not scalable, my systems are not secure. So do you think that is actually a silver lining that is, for us in the cybersecurity industry, this is actually making people a bit more aware, more secure? Do you think so, or anything that you encounter?
At this point of time, what I really feel is the time to really look at our systems and prepare it for the future. Right? This is the time we have no other way to work it out. We can't say that just let's leave the system as it for next 6 months. Maybe the pandemic goes away. That's not the time to address it that way. The time is to address into really transform our solutions in a manner that we are ready for the future.
I just wanted to add to that. No, I mean, absolutely. This pandemic is, I think, from a security and risk practitioner's point of view, as also as an ex-CISO, I think the one silver lining from this pandemic is that obviously nowadays companies are facing a protracted workforce activations from home. People are, at home. Their teams are not at full power, and that means the avenues for nefarious actors to execute their attacks is obviously on the rise, and we're seeing that across the board with the partners we work with. What does that mean from a security and risk and resilience perspective? That means that we're going to see, and we are seeing, an accelerated acceptance that there needs to be a cultural transformation within the organization or within organizations where whenever this event has already happened, what we're hearing from boardrooms is that the boardrooms don't want they want to be ready for any future events that might happen, and that is obviously allowing them to put in place the mechanisms to make sure that whenever this happens next time, or whatever the fallout from this event is, they're ready for that. So that cultural awareness, that awakening, quote unquote, from a practitioner's point of view, that is always a good thing to see. Obviously, it's coming at a very large cost, at a human cost, but but that is something from a practitioner's point of view I'm seeing in the market, and that's a good thing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, actually, I think this is a really wake-up call for a lot of organizations, that they need to get themselves really prepared for a mindset shift in the process, in the people, as well as in the technology, such as the infrastructures.
Can I just add one quick thing to that, if you allow me?
Yes, sure.
Sure. So see, from a risk, security, and resilience practitioner's point of view, we always take the long-term view of any calamitous event or any event that can disrupt the normal flow of an organization's business. So from that perspective, what I'm seeing in the market and with the partners I'm working with is that this has accelerated their push to make sure that they scale their capacities, their infrastructure, their security and resiliency postures. And some organizations are going to be able to meet any future fallout. Some organizations won't, because they have not accepted this as a transformative event. They said, so there are always two sides of the coin here. But overall, this is driving transformation across organizations, across the board, regardless of which sector they're in.
Okay. Thanks for bringing out the infrastructure point also, and I think I want to get back to Ivan on this point, because he also mentioned that I think the infrastructure needs a relook, and since Ivan is also managing the research programs that may be at the cutting edge of this, so with maybe a bit of benefit of hindsight, Ivan, what do you think that what should the redesign have been for those infrastructure? Any kind of research that need to be pushed in order to make these platforms more ready for the future of work?
I think in terms of research area, I believe there might be two large areas that people might start to look at. One is basically research in the area where you have to cater for offline, meaning research component largely depends on physical access to the test bed now. But with this events coming, people will start to think about, in the event that such thing occur, it happens again. So are we ready to move the research or partial of the research to offline to compensate for the time lost during this period? Second area, I think it will happen to be, would there be research that help to, or research that can be conducted in the offline mode, and yet we can achieve as close as possible to the kind of result that we can have when we have the access to the physical test beds. So probably these are the two large areas that that I think might be coming up, that might actually make researchers think further, and how could what can they do in order to absorb this kind of impact if the access to the test bed has been lost.
Oh yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that. I'd like also to get Mei Hui's opinion on this, because I'm sure GovTech is also working on a lot of platforms that are pushing the edge, and yet you have to, of course, make sure everything is still running smoothly. The government systems that are holding all the sensitive data. So, are there any new things that we should be looking into for that kind of criticality level that government is handling?
I would say definitely in the same line is a lot of virtualization, because we do not have physical access actually to all the servers, and shift to is more of a shift to using digital workspaces, and also all the collaborative software, so that people can actually work concurrently and conveniently. Because one of the key challenges I think that a lot of people face is that if things are slow, or you can't connect, or you can't work together, it causes a lot of frustration. And when this happens, it's a bit of human nature that they may actually try to get around it, or even things such as social engineering. So this always tap on the weaknesses. As the saying goes, people often are the weakest link. So I think one of our key also points that we want to champion is that we also want to streamline such operations. So I would say that one of the examples perhaps that I can share is that for certain workspaces, we could move towards things like very informative dashboards that have granular roles that different teams can access remotely to get what they want. So with such visualization, it actually helps them to work more efficiently and more effectively, instead of trying to figure out where to get the different resources.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So there is one more point that I would like to discuss before we move on to the audience questions. So actually, recently we have also seen a global increase in cyber attacks, and I guess from the point of view of cybersecurity practitioners, you may have seen, every time there's a crisis of any scale, there will be opportunistic attacks, whether it's taking advantage of the very specific nature of the crisis. Like in this case, I think there are COVID-19 related sites that have malware embedded in them, but actually I think some of those are really just rehashed, like ransomware, phishing, all these are just rehashed. But then I just would like to know, because probably you have encountered more things, which is there any extraordinary situation that you have seen in this pandemic that organizations may not know, that's something that is new and novel in this crisis? Maybe Sean, you would like to share first? Sean, you are muted, I think.
So we are saying really interesting stuff over here. Like you are actually exactly correct when you say that there's a lot of phishing domains, there's a lot of malwares that are coming in, and they are actually rehash of the original one. We actually tracked a version of Mirai, which was actually rehashed specifically with COVID themes, right? So, and then there were like thousands of new domains that were registered, and GitHub actually released a whole set of malicious domain list. So we actually analyzed some of them as well. So all these are happening, and most people know about it because that's a specific trend. You're targeting end users or users to fall prey to it. There are other things that are also happening in parallel as well, right? So I would like to talk specifically with respect to some kind of automated attacks or bot attacks that are happening in the world. So in general, the industry that is most pride by automated bots and other kinds of attacks is basically airline industry, travel industry, right? So with COVID, what we have seen is, right, there is a negative 99% of the same attack that is happening. That means the malware authors, the bad guys, have actually realized that there is no point going after the travel industry right now, so the automated industry. So we have seen, so this is from our customer data, we have seen that there is a drop of attack to that particular sector. On the other hand, now we have seen somebody else has taken the top spot. See, online grocery delivery, investment accounts, banking. So it's not only us who are readjusting to this pandemic, we are also seeing the bad guys also readjusting, and they are trying to, the goal is simple. They want to monetize it as much as they can. They want to go to after the industry that can actually lead or generate more revenue at this point of time. So that is why if your growth is increasing, if your traffic is increasing, you should also expect that there is a decent amount of bad traffic coming into you as well.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah. Manan, do you have more things to share? And maybe like the financial industry that you used to be in used to be a hot target as well. Is this something that continues right now?
Oh, thank you for that question. No, I think in any calamitous event, there are going to be actors who are going to use social engineering to exploit the weakest link in the chain, which is the human factor. So that is inevitable. I think what I'm talking about with our partners in the region, with our clients in the region, is this very thing that they haven't done. What we're seeing in the market with our partners is that, which is reinforcing what we have been saying all along and what practitioners say always, is making sure that you have your security controls in place and that you have enough testing, various types of testing in place to make sure that in the event of a calamitous event, you're able to exercise the management of those controls. And we've seen across some sectors, the maturity still yet to be had with our partners. And that is obviously something which we're trying to work and fix. But yeah, social engineering is the first thing which is the first thing which nefarious actors exploit. And that all comes back to the culture of the organization. It comes back to making sure that you have a very strict testing regimen in place. You have very strict GRC in place. You have, and of course that will impact your mobile workforce, your mobile environments. It will impact your cloud security. So we're seeing attacks, we're seeing negative events across the board, across industries. And that is only going to increase, unfortunately. But of course, there is a way to work around that, and that is to strengthen your security, risk, and resilience posture. And I think that is what organizations are busy doing now. And that is something which they will have to focus on for the foreseeable future, because, like I mentioned earlier, the persistence of this and future viruses. But yeah, social engineering links back to governance, risk, and compliance, and how that is managed, how that is tested, your security protocols, your business continuity protocols, your testing, your training, your awareness, your assurance. So, it's all mothballed into how the organization's culture was before this and how they're going to change going forward. And we're seeing, thankfully, a lot of our partners go on that transformative journey. Hopefully it will serve them well, definitely. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah.
Actually, I agree that more and more targets now is focusing on individuals, persons. Social engineering is one of the methods, because now I would say the weakest link is now at the human beings. Surprisingly, my friend 2 days ago, he was being attacked through social engineering methods. So someone impersonated as a telco, asking to open his laptop, install a remote software for him to access into his system and the Wi-Fi. But he's smart enough to verify the telco and close it. And my friend also get a call from people from the logistic. Do you order this from the online platform? We have a lost packet for you. Could you provide us your details? So you can see more and more attacks are now focusing on the people through social engineering methods in one way or another. And because that is the weakest link for now, and that is the easiest way for you to penetrate into the network, through the ignorance and through the lack of knowledge of the people.
Yeah, thanks, Ivan, for sharing that.
I just wanted to add one. Sorry.
Yes, please.
Very quickly. So in addition to that, I think in any calamitous event, in any crisis, in any event, a pandemic like this, obviously organizations work on a protected workforce. They have protective teams in place, and that leaves social. Of course, the human factor, in my opinion, is always going to be the weakest link, because we're humans. We make mistakes. We're prone to manipulation. But other than that, because of this protected nature of teams, given the lockdown, given the circuit breaker measures we're in and other countries are in, that is leading to exposure on an infrastructure level as well, on many other levels as well. So from my vantage point, very quickly, from my vantage point, it all comes back to having a very robust security and resilience posture in place. And obviously, once you embark on that journey, and we're seeing our partners double down on that, all of these pocket holes can be filled up over time.
Yeah. So, yeah, Mei Hui, I would like to complete those perspectives with your perspectives as well. So, from the point of view of the GovTech, do you see any particular trend? And I think I understand you're also mentoring in a voluntary capacity. So, if anything you have to share about the human factor
I think,
that had been brought up, please also feel free. Yeah,
correct. So a lot of these things, even with all the technology and infrastructure we've placed, of course, I think all of us will agree that human factor is one of the huge points that can make or break. So even things like, as you mentioned, mentoring, so everything has to be done virtually, of course. And for students and those who are younger, I think in the news we did see that there were cases where Zoom had the Zoom bombing incidents, or people hijacked the room. So we do need to take precautions doing that, especially with the younger audiences, as well as I would say a general awareness, because I think more and more people would see that cybersecurity is not something that is just for the IT teams or the cyber team, but it's something that everyone needs to be aware of. And even the processes in place applies to all staff, or even if you're not working on a personal scale, like the example mentioned, logistics, scams and all that. So I would say that I think different sectors, we all do face very, very similar challenges. And one of the things that, of course, we try to bring in is that to create more awareness, so that people are generally, with the good technology in place, that it actually helps to bring it up to the next level, to ensure that everyone is using it properly as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe just to add on also since we keep saying human factor is the weakest link, but I think like Ivan's friend was also quite smart. So I think they can, on the other hand, if you strengthen the people part, I think that's really your line of defense right there, as if Ivan mentioned. Okay, so I think now we can really open up to the audience. I saw that we have quite a number of questions here. So I just start from the top. This one. Okay, so Joe Pressure is asking, you guys are all experts in privacy, data, and security. And my question is more at layperson level, no problem. So many security breaches are caused by user complacency and poor work practices. I'm interested in understanding how you oversee things like password management, considering privately and professionally. We have hundreds of different accounts these days. So this is about how you can manage your password, easily, but also securely. Sean, you want to start?
Yeah. So passwords are really, really interesting because it helps you get inside the system. But at the same time, if somebody uses the same thing that you have, they will also get inside the system exactly as you are. Right. The biggest problem with password is you have to remember it. As a humans, we tend to forget things. So what do? We write it down. We keep it simple. We keep it more guessable. Right. And then also we try to reuse it on multiple websites, the exact same thing. So one breach at one site, that means all your accounts get breached at the same time. What we don't know as in normal people that we don't know is, right, whenever a breach happens, there is a life cycle of the data that gets compromised because it goes to one hacker first. He uses it for his benefit. Then he says, okay, enough. Let me be a little bit altruist. Let me give it to my other hackers. So there will be waves, wave 1, wave 2, wave 3 of attacks that will happen with the same set of password. Now, as an end user, as a customer, right, or of any other application, what do I do? Because I will still need a username and password that I have to remember. And if the enterprise is smart enough, they will force me to go with a multi-factor authentication or an MFA. So that stops a lot. From an enterprise perspective, it adds a lot of friction. It's not that it cannot be bypassed. It adds a lot of friction and makes it a little bit difficult for the bad guys to come in. But as an end user perspective, yes, you will still have to remember the passwords, keep it complicated enough so that a simple rainbow table cannot break in your passwords. Right? It has to be complicated enough with a combination of characters, and you will have to cycle through your password. That means every 90 days, you have to change it. It's not going to work otherwise. And then if you're having troubles with managing multiple passwords, then you can go ahead and look for password vaults that can help you store and secure your passwords. Yeah. So there are enterprise versions, there are paid versions, there are free versions for you. So you can try a few of them. And if you really think it's working for you, then you can actually go ahead and get one for yourself and make it as your centralized vault. But at the same time, you have to always remember, password is just one factor. And if you keep anything dependent on one factor, the moment that one factor breaks, it's going to have a long repercussion. You'll lose access on multiple stuff.
Yeah, actually, I saw that actually some sites also they have restrictions on the length of password, which I thought is a bit counterintuitive. Yeah. So yeah, so I am supposing sometimes the company. Yeah.
It's a simple mechanism to extend the friction that a bad guy gets. So if you keep a password of 6 digits, right, and if you have a supercomputer or a powerful computer trying to break it, if it's only alphabets, it's only a matter of minutes before your password is actually broken. Yes, the enterprise that's trying to protect it might put in rate limiting and other things in place so that somebody cannot just circle around the password. But if an enterprise is not doing it for you, so there are multiple, right? So since you reuse passwords, a bank will actually enforce this. A social media website might enforce this, but your grocery near to your house who have a website, they will not be enforcing it. And there is 100% or 60 to 70% chance that you are reusing the password. So if I can map the demographic of the person, I can map the area, which is all possible with all the information that we share on the internet. I would be actually able to pinpoint a particular location region and then look for the threats coming in and then do my attack. It's just a simple way of finding my target and attacking them. I'm not doing that, by the way.
I wanted to add something.
Yeah, Manan.
So there's a saying in the NSA, there is no such thing as impossible. The impossible just takes longer.
Yeah.
So the reason why they have this saying is because they have these supercomputers in place which brute force passwords across the board, across major organizations. So what I'm trying to say is, to pick up from what Chan said, is it's inevitable that your passwords are going to get breached. And that obviously links back to how your organization, if you're looking at it from a corporate perspective, how robust your governance, risk, and compliance at your organization is. And obviously there need to be multiple hurdles put in place in front of nefarious actors, and your data and has to be covered in multiple layers of security to stop any inevitable intrusion which will occur, because that is inevitable. And nefarious actors are going to, one day or the other, find their way into your ecosystems. So that cannot be stopped, but that can be slowed down, and that is, what we work with our partners with across the region. But I think coming to that password management at an individual level, I think, that is obviously not going to go away unless we come up with biometric technologies, and they also have their own weaknesses, whether it's iris scans or fingerprints or face scans. They obviously have a probability of a very low probability, but a probability nevertheless of being duped. I think that loophole and that security flaw in the structure of how passwords and biometric authentication exists, that is always going to exist. So we have to live with complex passwords. But I think that is obviously that is a rudiment. That is obviously an easy pathway for nefarious actors into an organization's ecosystem, because as human beings, we loathe to voluntarily set up complex passwords, because you have to remember them. So that is obviously always going to be a pathway into an organization's ecosystem, sadly. But obviously there are ways, like I mentioned earlier, to work around that by putting in place layers of security, multi-factor authentication, robust GRC for your security policies to slow that down. But that is going to exist, sadly.
Yeah. I'd like to move on to the next question, because we have so many interesting ones. So I saw one here, which from Ling. How can one reconcile the use of air gap as a form of cybersecurity measure with now the need to work from home? Is air gap no longer relevant in the new world? So actually, I'd like to have Mei Hui answer this first, maybe, because of course the Singapore government has done the separation previously, but of course with this need now, we all have to adjust.
Yeah, definitely. So sharing some of my experience and also my personal perspective. So as Dr. Vivi shared, we actually in most government agencies, we do have internet separation. So sharing with those who may be overseas or who may not be aware, that is that for our work laptops, we do not have internet access. So we only can access things like work email or whatever that is in our intranet. So I would say that for this, we do have things in place like VPN. So that is something that all along has been well established, and it wasn't something that came about during the work from home period. So that wasn't a huge transition for most of us, because we are aware of how to use the different kinds of token and all that to connect. So in terms of that, I would say it's not, we are quite well prepared. And other than that, I would say that, of course, there are different softwares that are in place that, as I was sharing just now, we can use dashboards and all that to share the data internally. So that's something that we already have in place. Yeah, definitely. Well, of course, I can't share too much about the details about that, but I would say that most of the collaboration and work in terms of work perspective, it's doesn't really affect us very much.
Okay, yeah, that's good to hear. Ivan, do you have anything to add? Because I think your test beds also, this air gap is a concern.
Yeah, so I must agree, air gap is something good. But to be very frank, from what I know and our collaboration is, those are super sensitive will still have to remain as air gap. Okay, and that will mean the workforce will still have to go back to their office. But of course, the rotation basis will come in, and the way to isolate them and the way that they access to the sensitive system is still be required. But for those that previously has been classified sensitive, but have moved towards less sensitive in the view of this pandemic, people have started to implement additional authentication, additional devices to ensure and enforce security. So for instance, people start to look into diodes, where it's physically one-way channel, people also start to look into, like what Mei Hui has said, additional authentication methods. So these are ways that organization has started to prep themselves, their workforce for work from home with additional security measures. Yep.
Yeah, thanks, Evan. So yeah, we have short time remaining and so many questions. So let me just put that done. Okay, so there is one question that has been voted. So what is the panel's view on the privacy and data concerns for contact tracing apps? So this is interesting.
Okay.
Sean?
Yeah, sure, no worries. Okay, first and foremost, I do have contact tracing app on my phone and it is active and running. I have it on all my phones with my family members as well. And there is a genuine purpose that the contact tracing app is serving. It is for the greater good, right? Nevertheless, there have been concerns that people have been raising, not only in Singapore, but all over the world, saying that yes, it reaches into privacy by actually collecting some data and uploading to the central server side, right? So at this point of time, I would like to ask every person or every person who writes to raise such a question as, do you have Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, or any other app on your phone right now at this moment? Because that's exactly what is happening with any of the apps. So this question should not be targeted towards one specific application or one specific thing that you're trying to do. It is a greater question. It needs to be understand how we as human beings value our privacy and what do we need to do with it, right? So I would not try to go in and say, okay, what exactly or where exactly the application fails or falls, because we know that a lot of countries have their own versions of the app, and there have been known vulnerabilities in this app. One of the app that I was studying that was definitely not from Singapore, and I can't name it for where it was, had a vulnerability wherein you can actually just go in, make a REST API call to the app, to the backend server, and you don't actually even need the app. You will just find out the endpoint and just make a call, and it can give you the list of people who are affected in a particular locality, which I personally believe that does cross some kind of boundary. So the app needs to protect that for the greater good of, so it has to be there for the greater good of the citizen, but the control needs to be there in place as well. And security loopholes should not be allowed in something that handles such critical data.
So,
yeah, Madan, please go ahead.
So as responsible citizens of this country and any other country, residents of this country, citizens of this country, I think it's on a human level, it behooves us to contribute to this social endeavor to make sure that for the safety of our fellow man and fellow woman, that's on the human level. But if I put on my practitioner's hat, and if I put on my CISO hat, obviously I foresee obviously the privacy concerns, which inevitably will arise down the line, regardless of how robust the composition process for this app has been, for any tracking application has been. But I think this is one of the ways to ensure that the number of cases of this pandemic or any future pandemic are brought down. But purely from a security and resiliency practitioner's point of view, there are definitely going to be flaws in the code. There are going to be exploitations of this software. That is inevitable. I think the GRC, the governance, risk, and compliance, put in place to make sure that those flaws are caught on early, remediated. I think that is going to dictate the success of this program. But yeah.
Yeah. Maybe Mei Hui, I would like to give you some chance to go. So, yeah, as in, I'm sure it's the government put in place some monitoring also. So, do you see like attacks trying to steal information from the contact tracing system?
That one I can't share, but I think in terms of a user perspective and also like in terms of getting people to use the apps and also be aware of the privacy issues and what is going on. So I would think that in terms of the general awareness and education, that's quite important, because this pertains to people who are not even in, of course, in every sector and not just in the IT or cyber industry, where we are aware actually of the technology, like the Bluetooth, what it does and all that. But some people, they may not be aware. So I think there's some way to go to, of course, to actually educate them on it, so that to encourage them to actually know what is going on and know actually when data is shared and what data is being shared.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for that. Let me move on. How can we avoid Zoom bombing? I think that's
that's
password.
so it's a very simple question, right? There's a lot of try to vilify a particular software because there was some vulnerability over there. But things like Zoom bombing and all, right, it could have been protected very easily by putting in a password. The whole if you look at there was an attack vector that was mentioned about it. It's using a war dialing method wherein somebody can run a brute force and can actually list all the different kind of Zoom numbers that is coming in, and then they're trying to just access it. So because it's war dialing, it goes through. But the reason to stop it is if there's a password in it, the war dialing will not be successful. So there is a lesser risk of somebody knowing your Zoom number and somebody suddenly showing up on it. So it's simple steps that needs to be taken to actually protect some of these attacks.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. I think that is answered. Done. So I saw some question earlier that I think is worth answering, which is from Paul Henkin. Can you run through a quick checklist in layman terms of what protections we should have in place for our employees at home? For example, VPN, malware software on all devices, password manager, etc. So something, a simple guideline for people who are doing this. Manan, would you like to take this?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, there are a whole laundry list of items which I can list. We can speak an hour on that. I think the best practices of the organization in terms of password complexity, data sandboxing, especially on BYOD devices, making sure that you're this is obviously from a corporate level down. So there are two aspects to this. From a corporate level, the corporate security policy needs to be robust enough to implement password complexity, implement data sandboxing, implement installation oversight, etc. So that is from a corporate perspective. But obviously, from an individual perspective, again, simple best practices, making sure that the segregation of your private and your personal and your corporate data, and making sure that you have authentication on, multi-factor authentication on, you have complex passwords, etc. I think these common sense measures would definitely go some way in mitigating any attacks. But again, if we're talking about an organization, if we're talking about your work PCs, your work laptops, your work phones, that has to come from obviously your organization, and they obviously need to have a well thought out security policy, making sure that they have robust governance, risk, and compliance put in place on your mobile devices, on your whatever devices you use to access the public internet. So yeah, there are two aspects to that. So that's my 2 cents.
Oh yeah, thanks. If that covers all, I think we move on to the next one. Actually, we have 3 minutes left, but maybe we can overrun a bit to address the questions. So right now, the top question, my question is for Mei Hui, but I think the panelists can all chip in. Now that many places are relying on safe entry for contact tracing, what is the government doing to ensure that SingPass login will not be easily exploited by the bad guys? A QR code phishing website can be easily created. So how do Singaporeans know if it's legit to provide our information? So yeah, I think government perspective, but after that, I think the cybersecurity experts also can provide their answers in general.
So this one, I think most people know that safe entry is something that came from GovTech, and I'm from GovTech. I would also have a disclaimer here that whatever opinions that I share is from myself as a citizen and as a user of safe entry, because I do not represent the safe entry team because I'm not from the safe entry team. So based on the question asked is that, so for this, what are the ways to prevent things like phishing from QR code? So to share with some of those who may not be aware of what scenario this could be. So in terms of this is that for the safe entry, we actually have to scan QR codes to check in and check out of different locations. And some of there's a personal data that is collected, and this is done through things such as SingPass Mobile. So in terms of application security if you're using the app, definitely it is through a secure channel, because if you're downloading it from the App Store and all that, as a user, you need to ensure that you are downloading it from a legitimate source, and not not through things like such as a jailbroken phone and all that. So those kind of checks are already in place. Then if you are using QR code, of course, personal opinion is that definitely do take some vigilance to ensure that the after you scan the QR code, the URL is generated. So do check the URL, make sure that it's legitimate and not some strange site. It's the same as phishing scams, that a lot of the codes and the URL when expanded goes to somewhere else that is malicious. So one is user vigilance, and of course in the places where the QR codes are scanned, there are security guards and actually the safe distancing ambassadors who are there. So if you have any queries, do reach out to them and ask, or how to do it, for those who are not very aware about that. So definitely there are both, I would say, physical measures and also like the software measures in place, but definitely always emphasize that, of course, you have to practice your own vigilance and awareness in terms of that. So this is coming from personal experience, of course, that I would say that all of us in Singapore, once we are out and about, we also have to use the safe entry, and it's something that I would say that that we have already encountered as part and parcel of our lives now.
Yeah, I think for safe entry itself, because there's an integration with the SigPass app, so I think that may reduce the concern a bit if you get the legit SigPass app. But I think the general issue here is really the QR code phishing, which can happen for other things as well. So between the other panelists, do you have anything to share about what can people do?
So from my perspective, I feel that as long as there's any technologies, you are very sure to face some challenges along the way. It may not be now, it can be later part of the time. So I think everything boils down to personal vigilance and the resiliency in how you're able to pick up all this. So be very mindful. My recommendation is be very mindful. Maybe you have to attend some awareness, or you yourself probably have to be aware. Take a look and do not be spoofed by all the fake URL. So I think personal effort in maintaining all their privacy is also a part that everyone have to play. We might not be able to depend the technology entirely. It helps to facilitate our staff, our work, but then I think personal effort is still required to make sure and to check. I think that's something that's very important.
Okay, yeah, thanks. So let's move on. Maybe we only have time for one or two more. Okay, may I know if there are any cybersecurity training in general against such online privacy, data protection, bombing, etc.? So Ivan, I think you you may know a bit more about training.
Yeah, so because I'm the trainer for conducting cybersecurity training, so I don't think there are very specific cybersecurity courses on all the topics that you're mentioning, but there are quite a lot and handful of cybersecurity training that cover a wide perspective of concept that is either at awareness level, technical level, or even hands-on level. So it's probably good that you can search around. Even SGInnovate offers some of the courses. Take a look. They were able to provide you some very good concept of cybersecurity, either to upgrade or upkit, or even to make yourself more aware of the cybersecurity vulnerability and threats.
Thanks. So let me click that done. Next question is, on a global level, we have seen a rise in domestic violence as part of the pandemic. What does this mean for information security of victim? How do industry protect this data of DV victim? I'm not too sure of this. As in maybe the questioner means that this is reported somewhere and it exposes. Anyway, yeah, sorry, maybe if the questioner don't mind, you can clarify, but meanwhile, we will address other questions. So next one, Philippa asked that, do you believe we have to choose between privacy and personal transparency? It jumped. The contact tracing apps and the like suggest we should all share freely, but there seems to be little question about where our data is held. by who, etc. So we did address the part about contact tracing, balancing the needs for the public health safety, I suppose. But probably this is also tied about the awareness of the personal vigilance, asking where the data is held, or maybe is there any policy regulation viewpoint from the government? Maybe Mei Hui can comment if there's any additional point on this. As in the point, if I clarify, is more about whether there should be more policing of the apps that ask for your personal questions, if I generalize it to that. Whether, of course, we have said that the person themselves should be more vigilant about asking where the data is held, who is taking the data, and what data is being collected. But then from the policy or regulation point of view, is
yeah,
there
so
any
for that,
this?
we do have the PDPA, which is under IMDA. So they do regulate in terms of, I think, what the question, or at least what I interpret as the, you know, what are the things that are supposed to be collected in that sense. So definitely is regulated by something that is quite new. So probably there could be some people that are not aware of.
I see, yeah. And probably this is more the purview of CSA, I suppose. Okay, I saw a comment from the questioner also that maybe Shan can also elaborate in issues outside Singapore. So Shan, as in, yeah, some perspective from other countries.
As in the perspective on cyber attacks? Or
I guess about the privacy, people's approach to privacy, whether they are more, you know, they're more critical about the way apps are asking for your information.
Yes. So I will just share a few things, right? Like my role does allow me to have audience with people all around the world. So, but I do specifically focus on Asia Pacific, and I would like to just share some of the comments that I have personally heard from people who have been talking about the apps like contact tracing. So I know for sure my friends in Australia and New Zealand, they said, there is no way on earth I'm going to install an app like this. Or like, why, what is the concern that you don't want to install an app? They said, it's going to take all my privacy away. And then the same question that I ask you, you guys post 100 million photos of you eating out every day on your Facebook app. You are posting so many other stuff that you are, every time you take a flight, it's on Facebook. Like, what exactly do you want to hide at this point of time? But then that's separate from the question saying that, yes, there are personal data that's being collected. The right question to be asked at this point of time would be like, who has access to your data? Where is this data being stored? And is it being aptly secured? Is it just lying over there for somebody to take it out? Then yes, it is bad. Because yes, when something bad happens with these the social media companies and there's a huge hoo-ha. They lose lots of money, they lose following, etc., etc. But when we talk about a critical app like contact tracing, we have to be ensured that they cannot be, we do not want people's data to be lost. It's as simple as that, what I'm saying. So specific regions, specific problems. We have seen, for example, in another country where people were said, if you don't install the contact tracing app, you might be fined or jailed. So we are seeing all different spectrums of organizations and policies that governments are pushing in for people to install the contact tracing app. So depending upon where you live, you might have a voice to say yes or no. You might be given a choice to install, or it might not be even your choice at all. So as we speak, there are places that I know of where this is mandated by the government in specific regions, which are like hot zones. You cannot afford to not have the app on your phone. So depending upon the region you're living in, the privacy, you might be able to raise a voice for your privacy, or you might not be able to raise a voice for your privacy. That's as simple as that.
Okay. Yeah, I hope our questioner is satisfied with this answer. So yeah, I think we are really running out of time. So just to close, I think I would like the panelists to maybe just say some concluding remarks, basically maybe around the theme of how do you think the cybersecurity landscape have changed and what do people need to prepare for it, like in terms of their infrastructure, in terms of their human factor, their workforce, and also the society. So maybe feel free to comment on along this line. So maybe can we start with Ivan again?
Okay, so I think previously, most of the time you are within a company premise. So the data technically reach you through all the system, firewall, intrusion detection system, that kind of things. But then now in this pandemic, you can find that you are actually now out of the company premise. So the first line of defense is no longer the system. The first line of defense, I would say now, is a human beings, because you access your company network through your own Wi-Fi, and you have now to become the first line of defense. And with that aspect, that means company must be prepared in terms of their infrastructure support, in terms of the way they ensure privacy through process, people, and technology. They must be prepared for all this. That including the upskill and uptraining of their task, of their manpower, because they will be the first one to independently assess the threat, vulnerability, and to manage them before they grant access to manage their data. So that is probably my thoughts for this.
Okay, thanks, Ivan. Mei Hui, can you share your concluding remarks?
Yeah, so for me, I would think that, of course, definitely virtualization and also the move from being physically collaborating with people to being working from home is the biggest change, and there needs to be definitely more awareness about processes and technology, and of course how to use it to the best to ensure that everyone is protected as well, and also be aware not just in terms of work but also in our daily lives, and of course in our capacity to help others who may not be as aware of it.
Thanks, Mei Hui. Manan?
No, thank you for that. I think I'll close out my closing remarks, going to mirror my opening remarks, which are that given the pandemic, given the calamitous event we're experiencing, this pandemic, and given that it's not going to go away anytime soon for the next 12 to 24 to 36 months, I think that cultural transformation within the organization, if we're talking about from a corporate perspective, is very important. Making sure that your security, risk, and resiliency is not only technology-centric, but is people, process, data, and technology-centric, because these four pillars, they make up the edifice of making sure that your posture, your risk, resiliency, and security posture is robust and is able to meet the dynamic requirements of of the various threats which exist out there. So I think that is what I'm going to close on. I think we're seeing organizations pick up the mantle and make sure that they are ready for these challenges. The key takeaway, the key takeaway, I'm sorry, I didn't get my coffee, I'm stuttering. The key takeaway is making sure that organizations don't react in a reactive way. This pandemic is over and things go back to normal they were before this pandemic happened. I think learning the right lessons from this and ingraining them into the organization, into your people, process, technology, and data. I think a security posture, a risk posture, a resilience posture, which does that, is one which is going to be able to serve you and your organization and your customers and your stakeholders in the most proficient way. I think those are my 2 cents.
Thank you. Shan?
Yeah, so I have like a 2-point answer to this question, right? So one is technology, one is people. So we'll start with the easy bit, which is the technology. Technology is there for us to evolve and actually use and come in and provide solutions for people to come inside the system, right? So we have to do whatever Ivan and Mei Hui said, and we have to move from this castle approach to a more zero trust approach where you can securely open this application to access to end users, right? So that's something very technology centric answer that can be done by enterprises to actually solve this problem and to scale on time for the people's need. There's another aspect of it, which is the people aspect. Because of environment like this, which creates FUD, we really, really need to be open with communications. So one of the coolest things that I find about living in Singapore right now is the government and the transparency with which the information is sent down. Every day my WhatsApp gets this information. It gives me a certain level of confidence in the government, in the people who are actually handling the situation. And this is what exactly I would see other organizations to mirror in their practices as well. So when we mirror this kind of openness, it really, really helps people to stay calm and to stay focused, because when we are not calm, that is the time we make mistakes. That is the time we click on that one link that came on WhatsApp forward and I really don't validate it. And that one click will get me compromised. So that's my passing thoughts for this particular topic.
Yeah. Thanks, Sean. So here I would also like to thank our organizers, SGInnovate and General Assembly, and also all of you who have tuned in, who have asked very interesting questions. So yeah, I think really we have seen the change in the landscape of our work in this situation, and cybersecurity people, I think we are used to this kind of changing landscape all the time. So as Manan and the rest of the panelists have mentioned, just stay vigilant, and then we take this opportunity to really find out how we can move forward, how we can stay secure, and of course also keep things going. All right, so thanks again. So I think at this point I will pass back to Zee.
Yeah, thank you so much, Vivi, for moderating the session, and our panelists for sharing your insights and tips, as well as of course our attendees for tuning in. So before our dear expert speakers leave, I would just like to take a little photo. So if you just guys wave over here, and I will do a screenshot. Yeah, wait, let me just stop my video first. Okay, 1, 2, 3, cheese. Okay, Vivi, you can't see your hand. Are you able to wave? Okay, 1, 2, 3, cheese. Yes, thank you so much. And thank you so much for your time, and we hope to have you on future panels. Thank you, stay safe.
Sure.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Bye-bye.